Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to First Center for Spiritual Living in New York. We've got at least one of our people in attendance. Last night it was a stormy night in New York, and I know the place where I live is in two levels. One of them got pretty wet, so I know some of you are doing some mopping and different things. All is well here in the center. We want to welcome people who are here on the Zoom call, and any of you who will be watching or are watching tonight on Facebook Live or Instagram and YouTube. You can experience the interaction afterwards by sending us a message, and Jimmy can send you the link. In all of the things we do, every week, every Thursday, every Sunday, there's a time where the people who are here, usually there's some number of people in our audience present, physically in the building here in Manhattan, as well as many as 600 to 900 people who've listened to us on different platforms. So send a message, and the other thing is we can keep you included with our weekly invitation, our electronic newsletter, which occasionally has some really great gems in there for you. All you have to do is contact Jimmy, and he will let you know how to do that, or Google us and send us a message, and we will connect you. So tonight I was looking at a lesson that I had done about a year ago, and it had part of it was about humor as a self-healing. It's something to do. There's benefit in keeping a sense of humor and perspective during times that would otherwise appear challenging and dark and tough. So we'll talk about that a little bit in this lesson. But the thing is, this Louise Hay class, this self-healing class, is fundamentally and always about working on our consciousness, on our faith. People who wind up here learn to be what I was called years ago truth students. We're working with consciousness always. We're learning to see the affirmative side of life. We're learning to develop positive expectancy in just about every area of our life. So however you find us and wherever you are in consciousness, you're in the right place, because you can be no other place. You're always in the right place. We learn to do inner work here. And I remember at a time in my life where I didn't really like the idea of work, and I couldn't understand spiritual work, and that word really probably wasn't my favorite. But what we're doing is we're taking a look at our consciousness and our thoughts. And as we do, as you stay plugged into classes like this and conversations like this, you're going to be growing in spiritual understanding. We are able to go to a very deep place, if we stay connected with the teaching. A deep place, knowing, as Louise used to say, all is well. Well, I can promise you there was a time in my life where I did not believe that all is well. In fact, my conversations would probably be more about what wasn't working. And I was what we would call other referred for a huge part of, well, I won't say huge part of my life anymore, but the first 20 or 30 years, there was a lot of that going on within me. But we learn here that all is well, even in the most tough times or harrowing times in our lives. It's all is well in the best of times. We get that part, but this presence, this power exists even when things seem to be going against us. And I note the word seem to be going against us. And I realize some people in this extended audience, which now I'm hearing are many hundreds of people each week, may not be in that place where they realize that all is well. But it is definitely possible for you to get there, where you can live from that place of understanding. Our classes will help you stay in connection and help you keep you in a place of remembrance of who you are, and a deeper knowing that things are good and all is well. But that does require a little bit of practice. At the very least, it requires dialing in. And there's an old lyric from one of the Louise Hay CDs. Hal Joseph sang a song, and the lyric was, "Remembering and forgetting. It's the game that we play." So as you learn to stay plugged into these kind of conversations and keep yourself into a place of remembrance of the power and the connection that you truly have, you'll be learning to lighten your load quite a bit. And you'll be stepping out of the stories of woe is me, ain't it awful, poor me. You will refuse to see yourself as a victim. And there's loads of things you can do. So at the very least, if you can trust that much, just stay connected and keep coming back. Now I'm sounding like a 12-step program, but keep coming back and staying in connection. Our inner destination or place of being, what it does is, whatever is living inside of us in terms of that conversation proclaims where we're going. I always ask about the inner dialogue, the dialogue that you maintain with yourself. It's the greatest prediction of what's going to happen to you in the coming weeks and months. It defines your success. It defines where you'll fail. So always we're asking people each week to report in about the conversation that they're having with the most important person in the world. And when I say report in, nobody's trying to get in anybody's personal business at all. It's just like we're challenging you to start to pay attention to what it is that's going on with your mind through the days and evenings, because that is so, so powerful. You're creating a world and you don't even know it. So we're wanting you to check in more with yourself and notice what it is that you're spinning. First I want to say, this is neither good or bad. This is not that you're bad person, good person. It's just the way life responds to us. It's as simple as that. And it's as great as that. It's wonderful to know that life responds to you. So there's power for us to use, and we can use it more intelligently. Louise Hay would say, what's the conversation you're having with the most important person in the world? And that's a new idea, because many of us don't even think that we're important. Our opinion of ourselves, maybe up until lately, until we found a teaching like this, our opinion might be that we're not very good, and we might have a lot of guilt and shame and all kinds of stuff. And that's this kind of stuff that we want to alter and change. As you think of yourself and the work you've done since you've come around, do you notice yourself being more kind? Kind to yourself, right? That's the work of Louise Hay. Are you finding yourself being less judgmental, less critical? I certainly hope so, because we want to have this conversation lighten up. As you learn to love yourself more and more, you'll be amazed how your relationships will start to improve across the board. And then the other thing is, you learn to be less rigid and critical of yourself. Your propensity and tendency to be critical of others will dissipate. As you do this work, the world turns. More specifically, your world turns, and it reflects the wisdom that you're acquiring and the understanding that you're gaining through this practice. So all you got to do is show up and be reminded of how wonderful you are. And that's the assignment. Show up and be reminded of how wonderful you are every single week, at every opportunity you can. And it would be great to develop a sense of humor along the way. Because that would illustrate and demonstrate you are developing increased faith. Because if you're confident and you have a little bit more faith, you can look at yourself and a little bit less seriously and really have a sense that everything's working out for you and everyone else. A great indicator also is from the Four Agreements and other books that we teach, stop taking everything personally. It doesn't work that way. You can go and operate like, okay, someone's done this to me, someone's done that to me, and poor me, and ain't it awful? And you can keep doing that if you want to, but there's nothing good that will come from it, I can promise you. We have a term at the center. It's called a practitioner. After you take our classes, for a couple years and you study more and all of that, you can become a practitioner. You don't have to be a practitioner, for example, to learn this material. But if you take classes and you go through the self-development, the courses that we offer, you'll acquire more spiritual tools, where you will learn to take nothing personally, right? And a lot of people take everything personally. There's a lot of people who live in action and reaction and all of that. What we teach in our teaching here is that there is power at your disposal for you to use, greater than you, and it's there for you to use. So as you come to these classes, we understand that there's power that we possess, and it all comes from getting a handle on that inner dialogue that we're having. So as we get back on the topic, I digressed a bit. We're learning in this class always, each and every week, how to take better care of ourselves, and then we can take better care of other people. And we're learning how to do it in the best of times and the worst of times, and through the good times and the bad times, we're learning to take care of ourselves. We're learning how to take care of ourselves at the center through sickness and pandemics. We're always paying attention to the inner dialogue, to the most important conversation you can ever be having, which is that which you have with yourself. We teach in the teaching that we are cause to our own experience, after all. Now that's such a big statement. We are a cause to our own experience, after all. And we have so much power at our disposal. One of our goals here is to learn how to use it and use it more intelligently. This I've been saying for 30 years. It's all about you. And you're going to learn that over and over again in all of our activities. You will learn not to make your life about other people. Don't use other people as an excuse for you not living an empowered life. Don't use other people as a methodology to blame or to explain why you're not doing whatever it is you're here to do. We want to release ourselves from the blame game. Louise Hay was really clear about that. She said we're each 100% responsible for our life, but that doesn't ever suggest that she said that we're not at blame. No one's at blame. There's nothing about this teaching that would suggest anybody is to blame for anything. We understand that people are where they are. Okay, so you might be in a kind of consciousness where you're feeling sorry for yourself. And, it's not that there's a right or wrong to that, but it won't take you anywhere you want to go. I remember an old saying from another spiritual book, I am not a victim of the world I see. There's nothing good that comes out of living your life as a victim. Absolutely nothing, except more of the same. One of Louise Hay's affirmations that I've been saying since the 1980s, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. And we would do mirror work sometimes with that same affirmation. I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. I know I have repeated that affirmation thousands of times. And I've taught it at this point must be thousands of students. I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. That's one of the affirmations in an arsenal of powerful statements that we want to bring into our consciousness and that we want to embody. Do you really believe those words as you say them to yourself? I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. Excuse me. Because when you do, most of the work is really over. When you can really say, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am, so much of your spiritual work is already finished, because you're going to realize you are as God created you, that you're whole and complete and perfect, and you'll be living in positive expectancy. There's another important statement from Louise that I would like to offer to you now. She said, all healing is self-healing. And you can meditate upon that for a long time. All healing is self-healing. You'll be amazed as you begin to do the work on yourself, how your perceptions will start to change. people have a huge tendency to be talking about people. And then they start talking about other, the people and communities and their churches, their groups. And the thing to be aware of is everything comes from you. So whatever you're talking about, you are here, you are this creator, and you're going to say these people are this, and you're creating reality by your very words. Everything emanates from you. Most of us are unaware how creative we actually are. So let's go back to the idea that all healing is self-healing. As you do that, we're taking responsibility increasingly for ourselves, and that's really wonderful. It's important for us to learn to be easy on ourselves. We don't want to be cultivating blame, right? We want to let go of it. So we want to learn in this class to cut ourselves some slack, release the past, forgive ourselves, and begin to forgive everyone else. So that's one of the main messages. This is a message from Bill Tolliver years ago, who was saying it another way. He used to say, there's nobody nicer to be nicer to than you learning to be nice to yourself. Nobody needs to criticize you or punish you. You do a good enough job of that yourself, and that's the very thing that you really want to start letting go of, okay? There's an idea that was passed on through this material to me when it was written, which was everyone is doing the best that they can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they have. That's a big one for people to learn and to accept. Because if you really understand that people are doing the best they can with what they have, then what the heck are you judging them for? I mean, I've been evolving for a long time, many decades at this point, and I've made a load of mistakes. I'm sure many of you could say the same thing. And, it's not like you intentionally go out there to, mess up your life. You were doing the best you could at any point in time with what you had, and you will do more. And, today you have another set of challenges. You don't make the same mistakes, most of us anyway. Most of us have learned. So we want to be easy with ourselves. There's an expression from 12-step programs, easy does it, easy. The center has received a lot of calls this year. Now we're getting emails, and all kinds of things are coming inbound, and we have to find some methodology to start getting back to everybody. Because people are dealing with a lot of things, what I used to call exciting challenges. And I'm really thrilled that people are reaching out to us. A lot of people know that change is happening. They don't know why things are happening. Many people do not have the insight that we have in this teaching. They don't have the spiritual understanding. So you can get into a place where you get derailed and disillusioned. That doesn't often happen to most of us here because we don't take things personally, and we have the tools to get on track very quickly. But people get into, why is this happening to me? And there's a load of frustration, and there's a lot of people feeling sorry for themselves. Their businesses are over, things have happened. There's been a lot for people to deal with. And there's enough blame that's being shared. They're blaming the government, they're blaming the pandemic, they're blaming, there's a lot of blame. None of this, from our perspective, is particularly wise, but it's certainly understandable. The sages, the mystics, the wise men and women throughout time have all come to understand the perfection of life. And that's what we teach here right now. So we start again with the dialogue that we have within ourselves. And we bring ourselves back always to knowing that all is well. Whenever I talk to people, I somehow invoke the spirit of Louise Hay, and I'll say this is the time for extra good self-care right now. I'm reminded today, actually yesterday, of a member of my church in Florida. She had a great sense of humor. Her name was Joyce, and she was always working on loving herself more. She had lived through the nightly horrific bombing of London, which was, forget what year it was, I think it was 1940. The bombing went on for 57 consecutive nights. She lost her home, she lost family members. It was a horrific experience, as you can imagine. And I met her in Florida. She was older, and she was determined to do something with her life and her inner dialogue. I remember she was, any negative idea would come into her head, and she would say in her British accent, next, next. She would chop it right off and, go to some, she'd turn a negative into a positive. So I knew her, and she was probably in her late 80s or 90s. I could never tell because she was full of life. And she was always working on her affirmations and her treatments. And one week she came in and told the entire church group that she got married, and she's showing her ring. And, I wasn't in a way surprised because she was always expressing delight as she was working on herself. And she kissed her hand that day, and I believe I said, Joyce, who did you marry? Because she got me hooked into the story. And she said, well, we had this ceremony on Miami Beach, and that in her British accent, and she said, I married myself, is what I did this weekend. So that got a laugh from everybody, but she had a ceremony, and she married herself. It was a very powerful transformation that we all experienced in knowing Joyce. We got to witness. I had an opportunity to witness a lot of powerful transformations in teaching the Louise Hay material as I taught it to young men and women who had AIDS, as I taught it to young mothers whose children had AIDS, as I've presented it in treatment centers and churches all over the place. I could see the power of this work everywhere I went. So my suggestion for everybody here is to marry yourselves, love yourselves, and always, always cut yourself a little slack, because I know that inner dialogue that we have is oftentimes pretty choppy. We find ourselves in crazy situations, and there's a tendency to go towards that critical part of ourselves. That whole idea of analyzing is tearing things apart, and we're really here attempting to do the opposite, which is to build ourselves up. And as we learn to stop shoulding on ourselves, that's a word Louise Hay commented on as thinking it's probably the worst word in the English language. We learn to be less rigid, and we're more affirming of ourselves, and then we're able to extend that in a better way towards others. So those are some of the suggestions for tonight. I'm going to wrap up a couple ideas. Life, according to Ernest Holmes, is designed for your success. Even when things appear to be going the opposite way, we gain. Every time we go through something, we gain. We're growing in awareness. We're realizing that all events and circumstances and happenings are really here to be helpful, to cause us to grow. Louise Hay wrote that incredible book. She was a student here, as you all know. You Can Heal Your Life. And our membership here is growing virtually every week because there's a need for this positive message. You might be going through on this call changes, and I'm sure some of you are, and they may be really rough. And if you are going through changes that are really rough, you can pick up the phone, you can call the center. We have a team of practitioners/ministers. We're not all trained to be therapists. We don't pretend to be. But our team is good with affirmative prayer. You can send in your request. Sometimes it's just good to have a person to interact with. But most important thing to do is stay connected. Because if you consistently stay connected, we can consistently be giving you messages, telling you how wonderful you are, and giving you suggestions of things that you can do to change your life and heal your life. So you may be going through some anxiety now, some of you. This is the time to begin to start that conversation over and tell yourself all is well. Everything is in fact okay. And it is, there is power that's within you that's operating through you as you. And it will work out. And regarding other people, the advice for tonight is cut them all some slack. Slack. And from Louise, she said, everyone again is doing the best that they can. Please understand that. Just stop the criticizing others, and focus on yourself. So that means stop griping about people, places, and things. Even when people are acting strange, cut them some slack the same way you would love to cut yourself some. We're talking tonight about greater ways to exercise self-care. We've been learning to take care of ourselves for a couple of years at the center. We're vaccinated, we've worn 1,000 masks and been tested, and most of us are learning how to just get more rest, more exercise, and just keeping that messaging towards the positive side. This is a time for gratitude. Gratitude, of course, is a causative agent, so look for things to be grateful for. It's time for us to find deeper meaning in everyday experiences. After all of our services, I'm reminded that we have a community time. As I said before, please text Jimmy and he will connect you. We have the same login every week on Thursdays and Sundays. A couple more notes on tonight's lesson. This is one of the things I was reading about was in Norman Cousins' book. He was talking about the power of laughter and humor. And the last time I gave this lesson, I spoke of how he was, in his book, Anatomy of an Illness, which also became a movie, he checked himself out of a hospital every single week. He had a diagnosis, I forgot what it was, where he was given something like a 1 in 500 chance of survival. And every weekend he checked himself out of the hospital, and he watched endless comedies and said that, there's a direct benefit through humor and positive messaging that no one can quite explain. There are a lot of studies now that will explain it, but I didn't take the time to look them all up for today. I know that a lot of my friends seem to be glued to the nightly news program, which is typically bringing only negative news. You might really think about that, and find it within yourself to find things that will bring you joy and cause you to have some laughter, and remind yourself that you're supplied and supported. Other suggestions are reading inspirational books, or go to YouTube and find comedy, find some things that will uplift you. The thing is, if you maintain a negative conversation, you traumatize yourself over and over and over again, it's going to start to play out in your life in ways you don't probably want. I remember as a therapist, which I am, saying to clients many years ago, your feelings will follow your thoughts. So just think about that. If you're negative, and you're doing this, the sky is falling and ain't it awful, if this is pretty much the way you think, your feelings are going to follow those predominant thoughts. So if your thoughts are about doom and gloom, and you're perpetually watching that play out on TV of every social issue and of every, catastrophe, and there's always both, you bring all that into your consciousness. And I ask you tonight, is that really what you want to do? It's entirely up to you. So I'm not going to make you wrong or right, but understand that we teach you here how to nurture yourself, how to bring in positive messaging, how to work with affirmations. We'll tell you eventually, as you get deeper into the study, that you have incredible power at your disposal. You have the ability to transform your consciousness and live from a very elevated place if you're willing to do the kind of work that's possible here. We start with affirmative prayer. We rid our minds of negativity, and we come to prove to ourselves that there is good here and now always. So there's things to do. You can try meditating. That's wonderful. Calming your mind. Cultivating an attitude of gratitude. More important than meditating is learn how to give yourself these positive affirmations, and then eventually you can learn how to do a true affirmative prayer, and that will involve embodying these messages deep within your being. So that's essentially it. I was going to go into a segment on laughter, but I think that's enough for the moment. I'm really interested in hearing what you're doing for self-care, and if you're able to keep a sense of humor about life and positive expectancy. So that'll end it for me, and I'm going to flip. In 1 minute, I'm going to see what you have to say about self-care.